Hello, comrades. It's Premier Rever, and I am here to teach a few classes at Rever's Railway College. The first part of today will largely be about the tracks, how to lay them, and eventually a little bit of the signaling. And I think just because of time constraints, and I want to do this in a several-part series so that I can react to some of your comments. This will be our Thursday afternoon release. For those of you in the future who are watching it, you'll just watch it back to back, but you won't get a chance to get a comment in. So I hope you watch it today, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I wanted to start out with the very basics and talk about the different types of rail. So if we come over here and we open up our railways, there's three different types of rail. The electrified track is the prefab panel track with electrification added to it. And I'll show you exactly why I say that. The other option that you have is a wood-based track that's limited to 70 kilometers an hour. At this point in the game, unless there's some future updates, this concrete track at 150 kilometers an hour is really not limited because none of the trains can go that fast anyway. Or if they can go that fast, that is the train limit. So you're basically, when you talk about the prefab panel concrete-based railway, it's really no limit, practically speaking, in the game. So why would you build the wood-based railway? The only reason that I can see to build, other than whatever role-playing or limits you may set for yourself, the wood-based track, it is easier to get a lumber mill going than it is to get a proper prefab panel set up. In order to get the prefab panels being built, if you're not just going to purchase the supplies in directly to it, is going to be, you're going to need a coal mine to make the cement, and you're going to need a gravel quarry, and you're going to need those two things all working before you can make your prefab panels. The lumber yard is a very easy and relatively cheap. You just need a lumber post and the lumber mill itself, and off you go making wood. However, I would really argue against it for two reasons. The biggest expense in laying down these rails is not whether you go with wood or prefabs, and I'll show you one of the reasons. Let's close this. This is our lumber-based one, where we have 4.4 tons of boards. These are the same exact length little tracks, and this is 4.4 tons of prefab panels. The difference in price, if you were to purchase it, and it's relatively speaking, even if you were to, you have added labor in there, but at the same time, whether you're, assuming you're not producing the things, but even if you are, consider what I'm saying here. This is 2,243 rubles. The wood track, which is again limited in your speed, is 2,204. So you're talking about a difference in this particular case of 39 rubles. Sorry, I'm American, so I tend to say dollars, but or dollars. We could talk about the difference in the dollar price. So really there, it's about the same. But in any event, the percentage should be about the same. So in any event, you're really not saving yourself any money if you're doing it. And even if you have the lumber, I would argue, well, you're really limiting yourself for two reasons. One, your trains will be slower. And two, this is why I built this other little section. If we come down here and we want to upgrade our prefab panel track, we have no problem. If we want to upgrade our wood track to electric, we can't. So, and it won't let you. You need to come in and demolish this track. Come by, build yourself, well, you could build the prefab panel track, or you could just build this, but here well, you already know it works. Let's just build we'll build the electrified track. Sorry, come on, get in there. There we go. Right? So now we're going to build that electrified track at that point. So I just wanted to mention that because, in my mind, there's very little argument for wood track, especially because once you get your rail system going, trying to upgrade by deleting those you're really talking about spending twice as much money if you ever might upgrade to electric track. So absolutely, if you really don't care that your train speeds are limited in certain circumstances, it may be better building that if you only have the wood available at that point. But if you're paying for things, why not pay that tiny bit percentage more and get the track that's not limited? So there just would be very few circumstances that I would see ever going with the wood track, to the point I just never do. So, again, play the game the way you want. I'm not saying you have to do it one way or the other. But we want to come out here and we want to build a track. And I want this to be relatively straight, so can't get it to turn red. There we go. I'm going to put on the wireframe, and I definitely recommend that you do if you want your trains to be straight. If you don't, that's okay too. Now I'm going to build this, or at least plan it out, longer. Now nothing's actually going to get built at this moment because we have it paused, and I did that deliberately. And we are on auto purchase, so you can, if you're building these with the construction office or whatever your particular circumstance is, like you watch out if you don't want to spend too much money. Now I want to point out here that if you look at this situation, the tightest track I can make is this tight, and it's about 3.5. Does that make sense? If we count these blocks, 1, 2, 3.5. That's about the tightest turn we can make. Keep that in mind as you're laying things out, especially if you're using the grid. Know that that's really, the minimum amount that you could have. So I'm going to take this track. Now, if it gets too close, it's going to be a problem. But a lot of times what I'll do, I've learned, is in order to lay this out and get this to be a real nice looking turn, I found this to be the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to come up here and do 1, 2, 3.5, maybe a little more, because is this guy right on the line? He's pretty close. So maybe we will go like right in the half. Let's try like for right there. Might be a little bit off. And then I'm just going to come along here. Now see how that's not real good looking, but you can kind of play it out. Now the other thing is I could say I want to try to go one closer because of the way that laid out. Is that better looking? I don't know. But before we build anything, again, depending on how you're doing it, you can just come up here, delete that. No harm, no foul, right? That wasn't the perfect little loop. It's a little bit off here, but this game, it's just tough to get that perfect turn every time. But there we go. Let me play time. So when I say no harm, no foul, I mean, there we are. We have this track. Now, one of the things we did by constructing it that way was create 2 little nodes here. Now, I don't know how much that affects the trains. I know the trains recognize the nodes in certain scenarios, but I don't want nodes there. So I'm going to put a signal in both places. And as long as there's not a train on one of these segments, which there's not right now, when I delete that, it gets rid of those little nodes. So see, we have that's one entire train track the entire way, which I don't know how much that's going to improve your game efficiency, but at times those nodes get in your way, and I just don't think it can hurt if you get rid of those. If you don't, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it, that's for sure. But there we go. So we have a little train track that we can get out to the next train track. And I want to point this out. This may be going too in depth, but let's come here, and I am going to buy a train, and I want it to be diesel, just because diesel is going to be harder to deal with. If you have electric track, you don't have to worry about them getting back to a diesel station, which adds, it's certainly a reason to electrify all your track, but it's very expensive. It's a lot more expensive because those electrical components are so expensive. Plus you need more steel and need more prefab panels. If you're manually constructing, it costs you more. So we're just going to buy this train because it's red, and why not? And then I want to buy, let's get a couple cargo wagons. I want to show you guys something. This cargo wagon says 30 kilometers. So you may say, well, look, I just want to go 30 kilometers. Like, that means I can build that wood track, right? Well, maybe not. So let's buy 3 trains. You know I'm going somewhere with that, don't you? I hope. And let's come up here, and we're going to tell him we want him to go from this station to this station. Oops, I probably should have started him before I closed that. And I don't have time playing anyway, but there we go. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. Let's turn off that wireframe because it's ugly. I don't know about ugly. I guess the game's prettier without it. Let's put it that way. So there we go. So let's keep an eye. Let's open this guy up and see how fast he gets going as he's going along there. So see, look, he's over 70 kilometers an hour, and it's because he's empty. So I believe when they're full, they might be limited to that amount. But look, he's going 100 kilometers an hour, which is the limit of this train. So keep that in mind. But there we go. So now what I'll do, well, no, I'll leave that open. I'll leave this connected for a minute, even though we're going to get this one going, because I want to show you something else. Now, this train is just going to go back and forth here forever, and he's not going to have any problems. Let's come up here and build a little more track and get another couple trains going, hopefully real quickly here. And one of the reasons I like to do this tightest turn thing is, depending on how accurate you are with it. Look at that. We got a real nice little thing going there. And we could get that guy to attach up. So now we can get 2 trains on this one. So now one of the other things I want to do and talk about real quick is a waypoint. I want to see if this train, and I don't actually know the answer to this question. So there we go. I put in a waypoint. A little hard to see. Let me hit escape. See, there it is right there. So we have a waypoint on this upper track. Now, I don't know which way this guy would go anyway, but we're going to buy 2 more trains. Just kind of the same setup, maybe different colors. Yeah, so we're going to buy 2 trains, and then we're going to buy, I forget which one, hopper. I know we didn't have any hoppers, and then we'll have, how about some open hauls? Now, if you notice, those come up here. I would hope that you would recognize that you could just drag them, and there we go. So now we have our 2 trains. Let's open them both up and close all this stuff down. Now, I would like to see, now again, it's kind of a 50-50 shot, right? He might have decided to go the right way anyway, but if we tell him to go to this one, oops, why don't you have power supply? Really? Oh, okay, well did I not purchase? Oops. Yeah, let's go to import mode. There we go. Yeah, because this guy stopped here because he didn't have power. But there he goes. He's filling up now. I'm not sure why it does that. There's no reason. I don't think it should bounce around like that. But certain functions cause that to bounce around. But the problem is with it bouncing around is that's also one of your indicators that you're overpowering or using too much power. So there we go. So now I am going to come in here and assign this guy, the one that's the cement hoppers, and I want to see if he's smart enough. Is he smart enough to realize that he needs to go to that upper track because he has to get to that waypoint next? Let's just see what happens. Because otherwise he may go to the lower track, which is theoretically the faster way to get to this station. So let's just see what he does real quick. This is an experiment in the school, in Rever's Railway College. You're seeing experimentation going on as we speak. Now the other guy, we could talk about how we could get him in here. Now look at that. See, he's not smart enough to realize that, and he may even get like all fouled up here. Now, yep, see that he got all fouled up because he's not smart enough. The game, these trains, here, let's pause it for a second. These trains pick their own route, and I think what they do, from what I've gathered, is in some ways the depot is another station, and the waypoints are like a station as well. So what's happening here is he's not smart enough to look to what he's going to do in the next station, right? There's no planned route that says you have to go to this bottom track. Like other games might have, you know, spot 1 and 2 here, where you could say go to spot 1 instead of spot 2, or track 1 instead of track 2. He had no idea where he was going to go after he went to this station. So what I'm going to do is just to straighten this out is I'm going to delete that waypoint. But there, that's good for me to know and good for you guys to know as well. All right, so now what we could do is say, okay, you go ahead. And by the way, I kind of knew he would try to go to that bottom track because they're always going to try to take the easier way to get there. As long as there's not a traffic jam going, it gets confusing to know which way they're going. But now, yeah, so in any event, you get the idea. I had a feeling he would go to that bottom track, which is why I put him on that top track with the waypoint. But now that we got rid of the waypoint, watch what happens. And you guys probably will have figured this out on your own. Oh, I just crashed. Very interesting. I'm going to stop recording. Okay, let's see if we can duplicate this issue. So I want to play time again. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to delete this waypoint. Let's see if that happens again. Yes, it did. All right, I'll be right back in a minute. Well, there we go. If the devs are watching, then there is a bug. And I think my bet is that the bug is that it's sort of figured out that it wants to go from this station to this station. Oh, that's not a station, to this station. Not the diesel fuel thing. And because it has this in here, it gets all confused somehow. So what I think I want to do, just to try to not have this crashing on us the entire time, is let's head this guy back over to here. And then once he gives up on the idea of going to that waypoint, we could just sort of reset our little experiment here. So see, I don't even think we have to get him to go all the way back. I'll pause him when he gets far enough along. Yeah, there we go. We could stop him and turn him around. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that waypoint. Well, let's do this. Let's see if we can't. I bet you if we delete the waypoint now, we're not going to have that problem. And we could actually, well, you know what, I'll just leave the waypoint there. It's not really going to affect anything. So what I'm going to tell him to do is stop going back, right, and then turn around. So you can manually turn them around. Otherwise, he would have gone to the depot and come back. See, now I don't think he's going to crash because he's going to pick, and he's going to go into this bottom one, which we don't care anymore, right? We did our little experiment with the waypoint and didn't necessarily expect to crash the game. But what I would say is you probably have two options to force him. Here, let's pause. One of the things that you can do with your signaling, like let's just say we don't want him to go in the bottom. We may be able to crash the game again here, or at least give him some pause. If he has planned to go this way, he will no longer be able to go that way. So one of the things you can do to force trains the way you want, you could delete a little section of track here, but you could also just put a signal in, making it impossible for him to get into that track. And that's the cheapest way to go because you don't have to rebuild little sections of track. Now, there are times I've deleted it because it was sort of a permanent thing, but this is a good way to prevent them from going in. So let's see what happens now. See, he stops because he kind of got confused and he had to rethink about, can I get in there now because something's blocking my way? I can no longer go that route. And he should, I believe, go in there with no problems. Yep. So there he goes. Now we could do the same thing with this other train because we'll get rid of that signal because, hey, why not? And we'll put another signal in here and go like this. Now, we did get power hooked up, yes. Fortunately, we had when it came to that whole issue, we had a game save right at about the right time. So let's come over here. Go back to this guy since he closed when we crashed. And we're going to come here. Now, because we put this other signal, we're going to force this guy over to here. And let's start him because that's a good idea as well. There we go. So he should be up here in a minute, and he will go to this bottom track. Now, one of the things that you notice is we don't, well, other than this one signal, we don't have any signaling, and these trains are doing just fine. And you don't need any signaling. If you want to build a separate track where they'll never bump into each other, you just don't need any signaling. So that's one of the reasons I built this little thing. And you say, well, that's dumb. But no, it's really not. I mean, the best way to design your system is so that the trains never bump into each other. Now, of course, that's, in a sense, it's not completely unrealistic, but it's probably not anything that you will ever do, right? Because you're not going to have unlimited money on your playthrough, and you're going to want to limit the amount of track sometimes greatly. Some games with railroad games, you almost have to build single tracks because you can't afford to build double tracks every place. Even though double tracks have ultimately, like in this case, we have two trains going back and forth and they're absolutely happy. They will do so without any signaling. Look, we can go back to this and truly get rid of the signaling. And see how happy they are? No signals. Keep that in mind. It's a concept that you can use to develop your train systems, and it's just something that shouldn't be forgotten in that respect. It's that you can absolutely build, a train system that just doesn't need any signals. Now, again, that's probably not very practical and probably not very realistic. So let's go ahead. We are on auto build, so we will build some more track. I'll come from this signal here. Now notice it says crossing not allowed, right? And the reason for that is the game seems to get pretty confused. Not saying too sharp a term. When you're trying to come off of here, like either way you go, it's going to think you're trying to cross one of those two tracks. So you can't start right on one of those nodes. But you could start like right here and go straight past it, because now it realizes you just want, like, it's actually, even though it's a little hard to see, there's going to be 3 tracks right in that one little, couple meter space right there. See, so depending on where you do it, it's going to be green or red. See, as I go over here, it's crossing not allowed, but as I just come this way, see that? So keep that in mind. Now we can go to the point where we're not too close to this one that it's trying to meet up with that one, and then we can swing this guy. A lot of times I like to go from the 2 different sides because I think you get a better looking track. Again, if you don't mind wonkiness, you can go the whole way, but I usually find it's a little bit more appealing if you go from both directions. So there we go. We can attach this guy up, even though there's probably no need. As a matter of fact, I'm going to not attach that guy up. So there we go. So now what we want to do is I want to get, let's pretend in your scenario that these 2 train tracks or stations are probably a lot further apart. But I wanted to get the idea of how could you get 2 trains onto one track. And what you would want to do is you would want a place for these 2 guys to be able to go to this station, turn around, and come back over to this station. But if there's 2 trains on here, they're going to collide, so you need a place for the other train to turn around. Or to pass it. So let's go ahead and, we got to talk about one more thing. We don't have any fuel here. So we have a choice in this particular scenario, and you always have a choice. Do we want to put our fuel station here or here? What would be the benefits to either one? Well, if you put it here, then it's going to take longer for the trains to get off of the single section of track. In addition, we're kind of jammed up with being awful close to the station itself, so you really don't want the train stopping on this single track because that's going to be your busiest track. So keep that in mind, again, as another concept that you really want to try to limit any train stopping in a high congestion area. So this is a less congested area because you have two tracks, right? Just by its nature, half the trains can go this way and the other half can go that way. Now, we'll get into some other issues with this, with the way this game works, and this might be where some people's frustrations start, but I'm just going to come up here. And I can't delete a semaphore because there is none there. Yeah, I'll just delete enough. I don't care. I'm going to delete plenty because track is cheap to me because I have unlimited wealth. So there we go. So we're going to plop in that guy about the middle, just so that it is, so that we know we can get the train in there without him sticking his end off the other end, right? So they'll be able to stop coming whichever way they go in. Now we have that, and let's just make sure it has power. Yes, it does, and we're filled up. So let's go ahead and get a train going. We're going to buy 2 of the same, similar trains. Again, I'll probably pick some different. We'll keep going with our same diesel locomotive. You guys can play around with the different car types. I haven't found them, or rail thing types. There we go. We'll just buy 3. I don't want them to get too long, and then let's just come and buy something that looks very different. And again, we'll move this guy down here. just so we can have a difference in the train so we don't get confused, just in case it comes up which one is which. We can look at the flat car versus the other and know which one's going where. Now, we have a situation here. Remember, we need to get these trains to not bump into each other. So there's going to be no way that they wouldn't bump into each other between this rail and this rail. But let's get one of them started. And again, in this case, it doesn't make too much difference. So let's go here and here. All right, so start. So now, let's talk about, we need to put in signaling. And this, again, you wouldn't probably do this unless these were very far away. But what we've done is we know we're going to have more than one train on this track, so we made a place for them to pass. Because in this particular case, this was our least congested area that they both will always cross, so they'll always fill up with fuel here. We can then, you know, this will be as efficient as we can generally make it. So let's wait for this train to get up here. Now this train will run back and forth fine forever, right? But if we try to put another train on here, they're going to start bumping into each other. So we would have to put in some signaling. So how can we do that in a way that gets them to work like we want them to? Well, you could do it either way, right-hand rule or left-hand rule. I know a lot of Brits like the idea of doing left-hand rule, which means like the way this guy's going. He's going on this track here because it's just the most straight, direct path, but we could force him to do left-hand. I'm going to do right-hand because it works for me, and I haven't ever tried left-hand. You're welcome to try it. I don't see any personal reason why it wouldn't work. But let me talk about the most basic concept of signaling, and this is the rule I always use when I go to start my signaling, even in the most complicated situation. After I lay this out, then I go look for other problems. So let's come up here, and we are going to get a chain signal. Now, for those of you, this is very basic, so I apologize to those of you that know what a chain signal is and does. This chain signal is going to look for the next signal and see if it's green. So it could be either green or blue. Green means that a train can go any which way. So let's go ahead here and put in 2 more signals, right? So what this is saying is, and this is the way I would do every intersection, if you consider this into the intersection and this out. But that's not really our case because trains could come either way at this moment. So see how this is red? Because there's no green signal for it to pick up later on. So in order for this to even come close to working, we're going to have to put another signal down here. Now why is this red? This is red because there's a train in this block. And I see this kind of thing confuse people all the time. Like, this is let's put it this way. If the track ends, right, like this track does up here, this is the block, is the distance between the signals. So even though you don't have 2 signals, okay, so it's either between the signals or between, let's say, this signal and the end of the track. There's no train, so that one's green in this block. There is a train in this block over here, because there's a train in this block. So in order for us to get this to work, we can't have any trains on this block, right? So we would put a signal in here. See that? So now this signal's red, but this one's now green. So this train can start moving forward because there's no train in this block. Does that make sense? If we try to take this signal back out, you'll see in a minute that this won't work once he leaves this train station again. This isn't going to work because there's going to be a red signal. Remember, our chain signal here, which is a 2-way train signal, is going to be looking for the next signal to be green. But this signal will not be green because there's a train in this block. Now, we could put a signal in front of this station if we wanted to, or we could put another signal over here, right? Like when this train decides to go here, it doesn't know that this signal will never turn red or never turn green, right? So if we put another signal in here, or you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to let that guy get out of that block just so I can show you. Yeah, see that train, let's pause it for a second, is all the way up here now. This is a red signal, even though there's nothing in between this track and the thing. Like, why wouldn't this be green? It's because it's picking up this red signal here. Now, again, we could put a green signal here, which, you know, may or may not be to our benefit, or you could put another one here, which will turn this. See how that turns this one green, and then this turns green. Does that make sense? Because when you use chain signals, it's looking for the next signal to be green. Okay? All right. Now, by the way, it will also be red if there's a train in this block, right? This block needs to be free, plus the next block needs to be free. So right now, this is all one block up to here, really, and we would almost, as a matter of fact, well, this isn't connected, so, but if this were connected to our system, then we would need another signal here. I hope that helps, and again, really welcoming your questions. So let's make this a little bit more sophisticated, and you don't need to. By the way, I'm going to get rid of a node here by just putting a signal down and then doing that, so we don't have that extra node in place. So we've made this so that this is its own separate. We can use the chain signal here, but this would be very confusing to you. And here, let's do this too. Other demonstration. Oop, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Yeah, let's build that back. Let's unpause it for a second. All right, and again, we can get rid of this extra node. I've been getting in the habit of that. I'm not sure how much it actually helps us, but now look, our signal's red. You know, you could put that chain signal here because, again, it doesn't really care as long as the next signal is green. This one's going to be green because it doesn't pay attention to the next signal because it's a regular signal. It just cares if this block right here is clear. So it's important to keep in mind. Just because I think it's a slicker solution, I'm just going to go back to this one because we don't really need a signal interfering with our trains at that point, do we? All right, so now we have this, and I want to do right-hand rule whenever I can. So how would we do this? Well, what we would say is, if we're doing right-hand rule, we would always want the train to go this way, which is the right-hand side. So the train that's at this station, because we're going to get ready to have that second train come up here, we don't want to have a problem. We would want the train to go this way. Any train coming this way, we would want to go this way. However, the rule of thumb is, whenever you're going into an intersection, you need to have a chain signal. All right, so that's what I like to call a double chain. In other words, we need to make sure that this section of track is free before it'll see this signal, right? So what's going to happen is when a train gets down to here, this one will turn red because there's a train here. So it's really a double chain. Now, we don't really need a double chain signal here. What we really need is just the signal going in to be a chain signal, right? Because in other words, if this signal is red, then we need that to be red. So the question would be, can we put just a regular signal here like this, and would this work? Right? Well, in this particular case, because we know trains aren't going to go any further, this will work. Because we don't really need the chain. We need the chain coming in, but if you think about it, the train will come up to here and proceed in. The problem is that if there's another train already here, like, we're going to have a problem. So when I say this particular scenario, I mean when we only have 2 trains. But if we have 3 trains, which we will, we need this to be a chain signal in this way. Chain signal in, regular signal out. So let's do the same thing here. I'm going to put a chain signal in, right? And then this needs to be a double one because, not because we don't need this to be a chain signal. We need this to be a chain signal. So when you think about it, this one is out, right? And I'm going to go like this. Does that make sense? Now the problem is this is causing us a problem. When you think about it, this doesn't need to be a chain signal going this way. The problem is this next signal needs to allow, well, see, okay, this is a good example. This next signal needs to be green, which it would, but this is where, look, a chain signal works like a regular signal in the sense that it does turn red if there's a train on the next block. So we're talking about this block between, zoom out a little bit. This is a block that the train is on. And the reason this is green, right? You said, oh, it just looks at the next. No, it doesn't just look at the next signal. It looks at the block that it's covering, like between here and here. Plus, it also needs to have the next signal clear as well. Again, keep that in mind, because if you forget that that's how it works, it can get really confusing. So the bottom line is right now, this train should go back and forth. Let's pick up time again. I just stopped it so he wasn't going back and forth while we were trying to work. So he should come back, no problems. And let's go get our other train, and we're going to set him on the same thing. Now, one thing to not forget, or when you talk about how many trains can you have and how will it work, because we set this up one way each way, we know that the trains effectively around here are going to follow a little bit of a loop. When it comes to signaling around this intersection, it's too short to fit a train in, so you can't count this as a block as far as adding a third train, right? So each loop or each block that you're going to add a train to needs to be long enough to fit a train in. So as we get this other guy up here, you should see they get into a pattern. Oh, is he heading out? Oh, did I not start him? I think probably not. All right, and what I want to do while I'm here, let's go ahead and purchase the third train, just because I know that'll be part of it. And let's see, how about some blue boxcars? All right, so there he comes. Now, I know that when he gets in here, so again, we can't count these little short sections because we can't fit a whole train in there, right? It's not going to work. But this is one block that we can count on a train. Now, see, he's red because he's waiting for this guy to get out of this block. Let's pause it for a second because it's a good time to just focus on the conversation. So we have this one block here that's big enough. We have a block here that's big enough. We have a block here that's big. So these are two separate blocks, right? In between the signals. These tracks don't touch anywhere in between the signals. And so we have 4. So theoretically, we could have 4 trains on here that would work. So let's just kind of ramp up to 4 trains and then see what happens when we add the 5th. And the episode's getting a little bit long, so I don't want to spend too much time just going over each one. I don't want it to be too long an episode. And this will give you guys a chance to ask questions. Now, by the way, everything else we're going to do, there's going to be some trickier situations and how you handle intersections. It's all comes down to everything that we covered in this one. We're not going to do anything different than the concepts that we already learned. It's just how to apply these basics to everything else. Like if you're a master and understand everything that I was trying to get at, which I hope I explained it well enough. So this guy should have moved into there. Yep. See, now what this guy will do is, because he's forced over by our signaling, right? He will go this way. See, he's got a green signal in the way he wants to go, even though this signal's red, because this guy was in that block. You see that? So this guy's signal turns red. This guy's stopping to get fuel, which is fine. So that means this guy will come up, he'll turn around, he'll do his thing, he'll have a red signal here, and then these guys are going to be kind of back to each other. Right? In the meantime, while we're talking, let me get this guy set up so that he'll come up here. So I'm going to just go ahead and start him. So now I have complete confidence that this system will work because we have 4 blocks and we're just trying to add 3 trains to it. All right, so there he goes. So he's going to wait for this guy to get out of this station because, let's get our signaling back up. It's a double chain, right? This chain's looking for this one to be red. It's not, or green, I mean. It's not green, so he's going to hold him up. So this almost acts like one signal. Now, if there's a train in the middle, it also wouldn't let it go. But usually, when you're doing these little intersections with the chains, it's, you know, the trains are going to be covering both. But there we go. See, now this guy already made it up here. So now he's waiting for him while he gets over into this one. All right, so we always have a free block for them to go into. See that? This guy can get into that block. Now, the problem we're going to have with this particular kind of a thing, because it's not a loop, if you look at what's going to happen here, if we were to add another train where this guy couldn't move, it's not going to work, right? Because this is really just a one-way track at this point. So we're not going to be able to add a fourth train to this because they need that extra block because they're passing each other on the same track. Does that make sense? Now, if this was like a two-way system that we'll build in the next episode, you could get away with it a little bit differently because they're not trying to share the same track so much. I hope that helps. And I hope what I said earlier wasn't misleading about the number of tracks. It's just no matter what your scenario is, you can never have more blocks. You always need a free block for the next train to move into. Now, if we could make a little slight improvement and add another block to this, right? So let's do that. While there's no train right where I don't want to train, I want to come up here because I know we have relatively short trains. This will be the last thing we do this week, and you guys can ask your questions. And I'm going to come up here, railroad tracks. I'm going to delete, oops, it's roads. I want to delete this track from here to here. I'm going to get rid of this signal. And I want to make this a little bit longer. All right. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put a chain signal like we had. I'm going to put back our one way that way. I'm going to put another chain signal one way this way, right? And then we can get rid of this chain signal. Let's just let that play and they'll build, and they should, yeah, they get question marks. They should clear those up. So now what we could do is I could put another regular signal in, say right here. Now we've created another block. I could do the same thing here. So this is, oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right. So those are just regular signals in the middle of the track. And now let's go buy two more. So with that little tiny bit of an improvement, let's go buy two more diesel locomotives. And again, just trying to keep them different. A few refrigerated, we may already have them. How about a few hopper cars? And then we'll open these up, and we're just gonna real quick get them started, and then we will end the episode. Another thing, you may not know this, but you may. Let's go back to the depot. We have this. You can come into the depot. So which one is this? This one is meat, so this is refrigerated. So I could come here and do that. And a lot of times that's easier. So I just copied so they both have the same thing. You can click right on them in the thing. Like, I don't think you can do that in the other screens. Like if you have trains sitting, or not trains, trucks sitting in a cargo depot, you can't use this, you can't use it there to do the same thing, but you can. So we just started both of those, right? So they'll take a minute to get out so they don't, and they'll get up here. But I have confidence that this is going to work because we added two more blocks. So we have that extra block because of the way we're coming together and we can't loop around. Like, you could have the same number of trains as you do blocks, but you always need to have a free block for the train to move into, if that makes sense. So once these other trains get in here, we're going to become a very busy little section of track, and this is going to be very traffic-y, but it's going to work. So this is sort of like, how can I max out my rail system And then you might have a hard time getting them in here. Now, he got in. Like, because if this guy starts out first, then this guy might not be able to get in so well. And did I not start this other one? Probably not. No, that's fine. Let that other guy work his way into the loop. Yeah, so hopefully this guy will be able to get in no problem. There he goes. Now notice how much longer some of these trains are. So we need to, hopefully we don't have any issues with the length of them. Yep, is this guy coming up? Yep. Let's see what speed he gets up to. 100 kilometers. See, that's the limit of the train. So those wood tracks definitely wouldn't be doing us very good here. Trains are cool. All right, so let's see when this guy clears. Hopefully this guy gets in. Now we could do something to prevent, if this guy has a hard time getting in, you could like flip this signal around for a minute so that this guy would go out without this guy coming in. Let's just see if this guy wins the race, so to speak, to turn the signals. Let's see who turns the signal first. Yep, he did. Okay. And I think that's just, I mean, it's consistent. The game is programmed and computers don't do things randomly. So you would expect it to happen, but there's other factors that, you know, may not realize. But there we go. So this should work. If you look, it's not very efficient, you know, in the sense that we have a lot of trains sitting around waiting, but because we have a place for them to go to, this will move forward slowly but surely, and this would work. This little bit of track can have all of these trains in it. And I guess the reason for me to describe this and show this is what's going to happen to you. It's not that your whole system is going to be this busy, but you're going to get these really busy areas where trains just, you know, converge on like a major junction. And seeing that this works, even if it's not very efficient and you got a lot of waiting going on, right? Look, we're just waiting every which way, but this guy will clear, and then this guy will move forward, and this guy will move forward, this one will move forward. See that? Yeah, let's do fast forward a little bit. Just because why not? They clear each signal, and this will work perfectly fine. So like I said, if you understand how this is working perfectly fine with all of these trains on this little section of track, and you understand why this is working fine with no signaling, everything else follows from there. See that? We just won't have any problems. One last thing to mention is, Dennis, who's one of my regular watchers, has been playing on Linux, and he has issues sometimes with his signaling not working correctly. I imagine the developers will work on it. They're a good group of guys who keep working on these things, and I know they've been, just from seeing what updates are coming out, I don't want to say they've struggled with the signaling, but they've certainly been working on the rail signaling and trying to get it 100% for quite a while now, and know that they are working on it. So I hope that if you have Linux issues, that it will get cleared up for you in the near future. So I haven't had any problems on Windows 64-bit, or not recently. Like everything, this will work for hours and hours for me. There'll never be like a glitch that just stops this from working, as far as I could tell. I say that, and it'll be all jammed up next time next time we come back. But there we go. So I wanted to show you this. And like I said, if you have any questions about these basics, and know that if you look, we have laid out here making a four-way intersection, but before we even make it a four-way intersection, we'll talk about three-way intersections, and we'll talk about really the same things we were doing here, but how you apply them to an intersection. It's the same exact concept repeated. So there you go. All right, guys. Well, I hope that's helpful. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't want to make it too long. Please leave your questions and comments, and if you do, I can't read your mind. So, you know, try to leave me a picture if you can, or you can go over to the Discord. It's pretty easy to post pictures over there. The Discord should be in the description of this video, or try to leave as as descriptive a comment as you can, because I can't picture your situation, and if you without the picture of it, especially if it's a complicated difficulty, I'm really not going to be able to help you. So, but then again, you can always come to my live stream, or if you're watching a video and you see a similar thing, just let me know. I'll try to answer it in any way that I can, but if I just can't answer it, I can't answer it. And I'll tell you that. I need more information. But don't be surprised if you try to describe an extremely complex situation in 2 sentences and I can't answer you. It's not from lack of wanting to help you. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope this was helpful. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.